Hey, how's it going, guys? Welcome back. Episode 3 here of Design Patterns, and today we're going to talk about an abstract factory. So, strap in, we're going to dive right in, and I'm going to first explain a little bit of what an abstract factory is. Now, we already talked about the factory pattern or method. Factory's pattern is really broad, it's kind of like all these combined, as someone in the first video kind of pointed out in the comments, which was a pretty accurate. So yeah, we kind of covered the factory method on the first one, so I went ahead and renamed that one to factory method. So the abstract factory, it essentially does something very similar, except instead of like a single factory where you just kind of pump things out, what you have is more like several factories, and then you have sort of a top end controller or front end controller, and that one determines which factories end up being used. That way you can kind of get varying types. So a common example we see in this is something with furniture. You can have a chair, and then you can have specific types of chairs. So you might have, a general chair, and then you might inherit from that and have a couple different styles of chairs, like a computer chair, a simple wooden chair, or something like that. So essentially, you have this front end controller that decides which factory is being used and how the item is being controlled. It's very similar to the factory. It's just a few further abstractions. It starts to get a little more complicated. I want to make an example here, and I really love using game stuff because I just feel like it's easy for a lot of us to wrap our heads around and understand how to expand. So I've already made a factory 2 folder here, and I made it's just the CMake here. I've got a main that's ready to test stuff. I also added in a new folder just called utility, and I brought in ran.h and ran.cpp. So if you want some easy randomization, sure, we could code it up from scrap as we go. But if you want to add in randomization, all you can do is, if you have a utility file, you can just add it to the CMake and it'll compile and you can start using it. So that's super cool. I think it's just like utility / ran.h and ran.cpp. So that's just something you can do if you want to have the file once and then use it in multiple places. So in any of these little sub projects we want to use it in, we can just add those files and it'll compile. So super cool. I'm going to go ahead and pop those in because we might use a little randomization. I really like using randomization. I mean, it's obviously necessary for games in general. I mean, you can have a static game, but then someone's just going to make a bot to play it unless you add in some randomization, right? All right. I want to do this with character classes. You know how like in the demo RPG series, I made like Rogue, Wizard, Warrior. Let's make a factory of like a base player class, and then, we'll have those abstract into Rogue, Wizard, Warrior. And based on which one you get, it's going to have different types of armor and different weapons. And that'll basically be the abstract factory example. So I'm going to make a few classes here. And let's make, I'm just going to do them all in header files for the moment. So let's make character.h, and then let's make weapon.h, and then we'll make, we might make 4 of them. I don't want to go too deep, but I'm also going to keep these simplified. I'm not going to program them out so that they're like ready to play. I just want to get them far enough along that it makes sense. Okay, so we got character, weapon, armor, and let's just have a quick ability. And that'll be good enough. So we want to start out each of these with just an abstract of something. So let's go class, ability, and public void use ability. So it would do a thing. Now this abilities, maybe we'll say use class ability or something like that, but we'll just keep it use ability. And the base one's going to do nothing, so let's make it pure virtual, so it's essentially an interface, ability interface. Now, you could make this a lot more complicated because, ability is very generic. You might have some certain thing. Let's do use attack. Maybe that'll be cooler. We'll stick with ability. Yeah, we'll figure it out later. All right, so same thing with armor. Let's make a base one, class, armor. Public, I don't know, we'll just have a armor's sort of a weird one here. Let's have a dawn armor, as in like equip. I guess that works. Or maybe we could have like a, we'll try to decide the best way to do this here. Nah, we're not going to make it functional. We'll just have dawn armor as in equip armor. The programmer in me that wants to make video games wants to make these like functional enough to actually work in a game, but that's overkill for an example. So I'm gonna fight myself and avoid that because it's going to drive me crazy, but I'll do it anyway. Because I will accidentally make this episode 3 hours long if I just go off my instinct. All right, character. Let's just have a, I don't know. We'll return a string on this one. Let's see here. We'll have set class, I guess. Yeah, that's fine. We might modify these a bit later to make a little more sense, but I'm gonna try to just keep going forward. And the last one, weapon. We'll just have a void set weapon. All right, so we got all these little abstract classes, and we need to decide what different options these could turn into. So what different characters could we have, what different armors could we have, what different abilities, what different weapons, etc. So let's have a top-end factory here. I'm kind of skipping to the end just so you can see a bit of the example, and we'll have a we'll say an NPC factory, or NPC factory. That's fine. .h. And in this one, we'll have a class called NPC factory, and we'll have a void. We'll return an NPC. I guess it would make more sense to be like character factory, since we have characters, not necessarily NPC. And then we could return characters here. So it would be we're gonna do character star, character as in a player, NPC, not as in text. And of course, we're going to need to include character because it's going to not know what it is otherwise. And we'll just have a create character. And this one will be virtual. And we can basically have some different, characters being overused. I'm just going to call this create. All right, so we want our different ones now. So let's inherit from this. Let's go rogue. Rogue factory. Inherit from this character factory. And let's take that function and override it. So, we need to put virtual in front of these. Virtual. Okay, I'm going to do that real quick in front of all these. I was skipping that ahead of time. Virtual, virtual, virtual. Nice little keyword there. You already caught that. Good job. You're ahead of the curve. If not, very well. Doesn't matter a whole lot. So we'll have a create override keyword here. And this is going to return character. Now, this character is pure abstract, so we don't really know what it is yet, but so we basically want to make the types. Like there's a rogue, class warrior, and class wizard. I guess we're not doing cleric, we're just going to do rogue, warrior, wizard. That's going to be good enough. And these are all inheriting from character. So I'm just going to copy this down, put it all there. So there's our different options there. And based on these, we got to decide, are we going to cascade it or are we going to keep them all like at a single level? Because I'm going to do a little bit of both, I think. Yeah, well, we'll do it, we'll do it like this. We'll have, the character's going to have some basic stuff that's kind of required. So let's just give them some quick stats. Let's just only go with HP right now. All right, for hit points, and that can just default to 1. So we can just we just want something to kind of set in here. Let's also make a string class name, as in like the character's class, or warrior, wizard. Pretty common trope there. Let's include string here, and this way we can just have something happen here for set class. So when we call this set class, void set class, maybe it'd be better as set class details or stats or something like that, whatever you want to call it. Let's call it stats. I like stats since we're basically got stats here. Details, stats, whatever, either's fine. Override keyword here, and then we can just go class name equals rogue. And we can go HP, whatever we decide the rogue's HP wants to start out as. So 6 would be fine. There's kind of finer details of doing this in that demo RPG series where we cascade it more and work it to an actual game. But we'll just do a quick example here. And let's, we'll do all these real quick. Class name warrior. And since these are public, we're not going to do setters and getters, although technically we could. But I'm kind of going off the D&D base stats here, although it doesn't really matter. That's how I'm sort of deciding the numbers. There we go. So they all have different HP, and simple enough. So when we make a character, we got to do this here. This should be also public. Actually, let's do these as private, because I'll show you something cool here in a second, and often how these are done with C++. Alright, so these are private, private, but we want constructors here that are public. So if you make a base rogue, for example, it's going to go set class stats. And it's just going to call the one down there. So all you can do is construct it, and it's going to do the thing. So I'm just going to do a little copy paste action, get these ones done, and rename them appropriately. And there we go. It should set the stuff properly when we construct them based on all that. So characters are ready to be factoried out. We're good there. Let's go ahead and close that one and try not to go back to it, because I think we're good there. All right, so now we just want to work up some other stuff. But first, let's look at this factory and think about this a little bit. So on a rogue factory, when we call create and we get a character, well, we want more than just a character is the thing. We kind of want it all to be combined at the end. So maybe this character here, let's see, it's going to return this thing here. But let's, yeah, I like having, let's make a top end, I'm trying to think, it's the vernacular that's messing me up here, not necessarily, because, yeah, characters. Character kind of assumes it's a class you're playing, right? We just want to have one at the very top that's like the one you actually get in the end. Because, I don't know, going back to that furniture example, you get all this furniture, but how do you use that all? You have it like in a room. So you end up creating a room, and then you have all the stuff in it. Sort of that sort of thing. So we have a character here. Let's just make a top end one called player character. So these are like the playable ones. And this one is just going to have everything. So we're going to end up creating player characters, because this is going to have, let's see, I don't know if it's going to be private or not yet, but it's going to have a character, which is more like the class. I don't know, I think this probably makes more sense as character class. Yeah, let's just do that. That's gonna simplify out the vernacular a lot, because there's some overlap in terminology here that I'm trying to avoid to make it less confusing. So this will be the player character, and it's they're gonna have a character class. And we gotta watch out, because class lowercase is a keyword. So let's just throw an underscore at the end of it. All right, and we'll do that with all of them. Some people do that, and we're also gonna have like armor. These need to be pointers in this case, because we're going to be using polymorphism stuff, and we're going to have weapon. We're going to keep it very simple. We're not going to allow them to swap weapons or have an inventory or anything like that. They're just going to have, you know, a warrior's probably going to have like a great sword or a great axe or some warrior weapon. Rogue's going to have a dagger, you know, there's stuff like that just to differentiate it. And kind of make it simple. And what else do we have? We have ability. So essentially, we're going to make these player characters, but we're going to use some abstract factory to determine what kind we want. And I'm going to rename this from NPC factory to just character factory. Looks good. All right. So character one's ready to be factoried out. Well, currently, right now, we could make a factory for these character classes and construct those out. We want to do the same for these armors. So let's go with heavy armor. Let's call it that. So let's just work all these out real quick. And we're going to go void, dawn armor. Yeah, let's just have armor type here. I'll just make them strings for now. You probably want to have them something more concrete, like enums if you have a limited amount. And then, or you know what I'm saying. If you're getting limits to certain types of armor, you probably want to pull from some dictionary or something, not necessarily have a string. The string's just wide open, but for sake of example, we're going to keep it as a string. And of course, we got to include string. It just kind of simplifies the example without having to boilerplate more stuff. All right, we need to override this. And we basically want to set the armor type as heavy. Or we could say plate armor. Yeah, that's fine enough. Now we could do the same thing where we make this overridden version private, and then we just have a constructor. So when you construct heavy armor, I kind of like this being, I'm going to just, once again, like I said earlier, I'm overthinking this. I kind of want to make it so that this is like armor allowed or armor proficiency, but we'll just keep it tight. And I'm just going to go with heavy, light, medium. That'll be a little better, I think. So if we go heavy armor, you're allowed heavy armor, we're going to give you armor type heavy. So we'll just make this constructor here and just call Dawn armor. That's going to be it. And then we'll do a few more of these. We'll go light armor, call this light, and we'll put a medium in the middle of this. Medium, medium, medium. Cool. So we kind of have that ready to go. So we've got two things. Ability, you know, let's scrap ability. It's kind of getting to be a redundant example at this point. There's already enough going on, basically. Yeah, but let's do the weapon though. That's fine. Got a set weapon. We want to make sure this is public or protected. Protected's actually fine. Yeah, we could probably do all these as protected, at least to some extent. I'm going to leave the things we set public, but I'm going to make this one protected. That way no one else can call it further. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. That should be good. We could do special stuff where if you don't want people to construct these warriors, we could end up making this private as well, these constructors, and then just put a friend class for the factory, like friend class, character factory? Yeah, character factory. That way only the character factory can make these. So that'd be kind of a cool thing. I think we gotta go. Well, I don't know if we actually need to include it here, but let's do that. Let's add in a little additional layer of control. If these are private, we can just get rid of, you know, classes default to private, so we can get rid of all this stuff if we want it to just be private, and we can just put friend class. I believe we can just put it in the character class here. Now we got to be careful about the private on this one because inheritance, they're not going to have access to it. So let's make it like this. Yeah, that'll be fine. Formatting. Let's try that out. So I'm curious. I don't actually know if this is going to work, because I think if I do the character class on the interface, or the friend class on the interface, is it going to allow me to access the private stuff down here? We're going to find out. We might have some errors. If so, we'll clean it up, but a little trial and error here. I just want to see. Sometimes you got to do that kind of stuff because it's fun. So we'll do the same thing here. That public, this one protected, and let's also go friend class character factory, and we'll leave all these private, so we can just get rid of all these. Cool. And then same thing is probably going to happen for weapon. You can play around with these and do them as you want, of course, to some extent. We got rid of ability. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here. Our player character, of course, is going to need armor. It's going to need character class. Yeah, I gotta rename this this one to character class. Character class, and I think that's about it. We're also gonna have weapon. Still a little more boilerplate. This does take a little more boilerplate, but once it's all set up, it can be very nice because it allows the client to not know about the behind-the-scenes code and just create what they want. So that's where it gets kind of cool. And yeah, it just allows. Well, it's an abstract factory. That's the way it goes. Because, you know, from the client end, eventually you'll be able to use a single line of code and get everything together as you want, rather than having to call a bunch of different things. It's kind of the point here that we're building towards. All right, we got set weapon. Let's just make public. We'll use string again to simplify this whole thing, and we'll just call it weapon type. We could default it to undefined, but that's fine. This is good. All right, we'll need to include string here. So now let's make some of these. What types of weapons? Let's go off the D&D theme where they have kind of martial, simple. I don't know what else they have. I don't know. We'll make up a third one. So class martial weapon. public weapon, and we'll do, once again, friend class. Might be messing this up a little bit, but we'll correct it if so. And then we just want to have that constructor, marshal, weapon. We want to have it call set weapon. And we want to override the set weapon. Override keyword is actually optional, but you should always put it there, because if you don't put it there and you're accidentally not overriding, it'll throw an error. So it's just something to make your life a little easier. But if we left it off, it would be fine. It's just that if we accidentally made this an integer and forgot to override, we would think we were overriding it, but we're not. So you just have to be a lot more careful. And the override keyword just will throw an error if you've messed up the override. So that's really all it does, actually. It doesn't force any override or anything like that as far as I know. So we're just going to go weapon type equals marshal. And marshal assumes all the standard warrior weapons, basically, like, you know, the big heavy axes and swords and stuff like that. And we'll make a few more of these. Maybe we'll just make simple. We want to have at least one more. Simple weapons would be like, you know, utensils, basic dagger. I think everyone can figure out how to use that. It's pretty simple. Stuff like that. And then we'll have a last one called, like, I don't know, maybe magical. I don't know, it's fine. There's probably a better one to put, but there we go. Because we could assume that, like, the wizard knows how to use magical weapons or something like that. No, magical's a weird example. Let's find something else. Maybe we'll just say common. I don't know. Sure. I don't know. That's probably not the best name for a weapon type, but you get the point. I'm trying to make a cascade here. We would go like martial, common, simple. If you know how to use martial, you know how to use common, simple. If you know how to use common, you know how to use simple as well, etc. If you know how to use simple, you probably are not good with, you know, trying to make a little scale thing like that. But, you know, it's not actually going to be fully programmed in, but just for sake of it making a little bit of sense is the point. All right, so now we got a character factor, we got a rogue. If we want to make a rogue, what is the rogue going to do? So, the rogue, well, for creating a rogue and returning a, player character here, we want to call this create method, and this create is going to set everything for this player character, which are all three of these. So maybe we need to, we probably need to go friend class in here too. Friend class. You can do it without the friend if you use just public constructors. So either would probably work fine here. Character factory. And also, I'm sort of skipping over some of these factories and just using constructors, as I kind of mentioned. Like, for example, each of these character classes, yeah, we got a character class here, but we should have also a rogue factory, right? Instead, we're just going to go new rogue, basically, because that will call this constructor, assuming we're allowed, based on this friend class. I don't know if it inherits these friend classes, so I guess we'll see. I'm going to put it, I don't know, we'll play around with it and see what kind of errors we get, and we'll learn a thing or two. All right, friend class character factory. So we get a player character. We can only set these based on, I'm probably making this more complicated by doing all this public-private stuff. We could just use structs and ignore all of that if we're making it more simple. All right, but let's just keep going nonetheless. I've kind of covered all those little scenarios where I'm maybe skipping a few parts of additional factories, but it really depends on how complicated you're going to get, because we're doing a very simple example. So you might want an actual rogue factory that sets more specific rogue stuff, but the constructor is going to be good for now. So if you make a rogue factory and you just call create, it should set your player character just as expected. So let's make a player character, and we'll just call this the return character, or maybe the constructed character, or whatever. It's the one we're going to return, constructed character. And also, quick note here, you can see we are returning a pointer, which means we're returning access to a memory. So these factories assume that you must clean up your own memory. They're not managing the memory. So FYI. So in our main, later when we create it, we're also going to have to destroy it. So just a quick note on that. I'm probably going to skip over a lot of that and leave the memory leaks in, just for sake of not making it any more confusing than it probably already is. All right, so this constructed character, we want to set it all up, basically. We want to set all these things. We could say that the constructed character, I'm just going to call it CC, so I don't have to type as much. CC equals new player character. I am skipping a step. Okay, yeah, let's back up a little bit. We want this front end character factory to be the final top end one that calls the right factories. So actually, this rogue factory would be better in the rogue area. Okay, or rather, okay, so this says rogue factory, but let's make it, trying to think how to do this without it being too complicated. I think essentially what I'm doing here is I'm making this half builder method accidentally, so I'll straighten that out. All right, so what we're doing wrong here is essentially we're abstracting, or we're making one factory kind of construct everything. You're supposed to have like a bunch of different factories, which makes sense, I guess, because if you just want one of something and you don't want the rest, I don't know. Abstract factories basically get really complicated after a while, is the point I'm getting to. And that's pretty normal. So we have like this player character that uses the player or the character factory, and the character factory is going to make all the stuff for the player character. But also we could have, you know, an armor factory to make the right types of armor, which we should do if we're doing a proper example. But instead, I think we're just going to use these constructors because it's so simple. But it'd be just like the first episode where we make a factory for each of these, like a medium armor factory, heavy armor factory. And that would make more sense if these had more options other than just the basic types. So we're going to kind of skip over that a little bit just to make it a little more simple. So, all right, so let's just make this player character. So we'll make a player character, and we need the different parts of it. Let's see, where's player character? Class, armor, weapon. All right, class equals new, and then we want what type of class. So let's say this one's a rogue, for example, but you don't necessarily know what type you're creating until you have some sort of thing in this create. So we need to pass in something that says what we want to create. And what we can do is we can use a string, and we can just call it class type. Now, string's kind of a bad example because you can't switch on it. It'd be better to have an enum with all the available classes or something like that for C++ in general. But instead, we're going to just go if class type equals rogue. Now, we probably also want to do some additional stuff and like make sure it's all the right case, or just make everything lowercase and go from there. But this will work for now. So if they say if the class type is rogue, then we're going to instantiate all this rogue stuff like so. Player character. What else do we have? Armor equals new. All right, rogues use medium armor, so we construct some medium armor. And then what else we have? We have weapon. Weapon equals new. It'd probably be better as like weapon proficiency based on the way we did it, but whatever. We'll say they can use, what would we say, common weapon or something. Let's take a quick look at those. Yeah, weapon type common. All right, so back to our character fact, and there we go. And then we would just return this player character. And you can probably see how the rest of this is going to go. Oops. They should all be this. And basically, we just want some other statements here. Probably else if warrior, do the warrior stuff. Heavy armor for warriors, martial weapon. It'd be better. So these news right here. These could all be little individual factories, but essentially we're just using constructors because they're so simple. Hopefully that doesn't take away from this particular pattern, but you're kind of seeing the point of we have a top level factory that abstracts the other factories based on what we want to create. So this one is the only one that the client is going to use. Everything else is going to be hidden, and all they're going to get is a proper rogue, warrior, wizard, or whatever it may be. So put a wizard here, new wizard. Oops. Actually, file button. Let's cancel that. It allows me to. There we go. And they're going to use light armor and simple weapon. So that's essentially the main point here. And what if the fail case? Well, we can just return null. I guess you could throw something if you want, but since this returns a pointer, see character factory, character. There we go. So we don't really, we're kind of doing this in a way where we don't really need this public interface here, actually, because it's not really doing a whole lot. But yeah, so let's just get rid of this. We don't really need it in our example, but you might in yours, depending on what you're doing. All right, so I'm going to do a little cleanup here. I'll just make this an else case for the return null. And I'm expecting some compiler errors, so we'll see if that happens. Now, also, if you don't want people to make a bunch of different character classes and you only need one for your program, you can also throw the singleton pattern on this. Now, we can make this a singleton class by just making all this static, like so, and that will do it there. That way we don't have to worry about the instance and stuff. Let's go ahead and hit compile and see if this actually works. Let's go into our main. Let's include character factory, which should give us everything we need because it has character, player character. Oh, we don't have character anymore. Player character, which has armor, character class, weapon. Yeah, that should include everything we need. I forgot to put pragma once at the top of all these. We'll do that real quick. All the headers, just to stop some of the double include problems. I think I'm going to retroactively go back to these old ones. Yeah, I put pragma now, but I don't think I did in the episodes. So just make sure you always have that pragma once at the top of all those. Okay, cool. Save. And let's make sure our CMake is correct and has added all our classes. Looks like it has. We're not using any of this rand, but so I'm going to delete all that. All right, and let's CMake do its thing. We're going to hit our build and see what happens here. We got a little bit of a redefinition. Oh, this should just now be character factory based on the way we did it. We're not going to get too complicated there. These should be equals equals, very important. Otherwise, we're going to be setting them, and also we should return the class that we're creating here. So not player character, but CC, which is what we named our player character class CC. I don't know. Let's see. It looks like these are not very happy, probably because they're private, and this character factory should have access to them. Oh, we don't need the override keyword here either. But let's just see what error it gives us. So I don't think that friend class is allowing us to do that. Yeah, private member. So even though the character factory is a friend here, it looks like it doesn't abstract it down further. So the easiest way to do this would just be to make these public constructors. Since it defaults to private, I'm going to leave the private stuff at the top. That way we only have to type a little bit, not too much. But yeah, I just wanted to experiment with that. So we'll have a quick look at this one. We'll get rid of these. Just make all these constructors public. So it'd probably be better here if we were going a little bit further to actually make proper factories for these and make the friend class of each of these the factory for the different armors and weapons and stuff. But you can kind of see the point, and I'm probably going far enough. Fix up these real quick. This one actually needs it. We didn't make a constructor on this martial weapon at all, so that's just going to call set weapon. All sorts of little tricks you can do, which is kind of the point of design patterns. Are essentially little tricks you can do to simplify your code base a little bit. And it might not look more simple right now, but the reason it's more simple is because one of the big reasons anyway is maintenance costs. So if we want to change, rather than having to change a bunch of things in the code, say for example you don't like this common weapon that sets weapon type to common and you just want to change it to something else, you only have to change it in one part of the code and it cascades everywhere else. And the client end, which they're going to have access to the factory basically, So this is the only thing they would see. They won't see this back end being changed. You won't need to change the interface. It'll all stay the same. Let's say play again, see if we have any more errors. We probably will, but it looks like, well, hold on. We had one thing, I thought. No, it seems okay. I think one of these keywords is redundant. I think this one here is not necessary. Okay, but it seems to compile. We haven't put any test code in here, but let's go ahead and do it. Let's just say we want a new player character. We'll call him Bob. Bob, and what do we want Bob to be? I guess we need to be a pointer here. We can decide based on this player character factory. It'll be character factory. Now, since this is a static class, we just call create. We pass in what we want it to be. Maybe Bob's a rogue. So that's all we need to do. We'll just create a rogue, and that's going to take care of the rest. Let's just do some quick couts, make sure Bob seems correct. All this stuff is actually private in the class, right? Character class, player character. Yeah, these are all private. So let's actually make, I don't know, let's just make some quick getters. So we can do, they're all strings, I think. Yeah, so we can just make them quickly. Get class, return, class dot class name. And we could put more in here. Let's see what doesn't like about this. Oh, it's because, well, it's a pointer, so class could be null. That could be very dangerous. So we probably actually want to go something like if class, then return class name. That way we're not running into some null pointer issues. It still seems to be complaining a little bit. No, it's just this. It's not a function. All right, that wasn't the reason it was complaining, but that would be a problem. So it is very valid to check first, and maybe we want an else case of just return not set. All right, we can do that for all these. Let's just do it real quick. Well, we can do get HP as well, which works off the class. So if class is set, return, HP is an integer, so we can just do this as an integer real quick. And I'll just fly through these and then I'll come back to you guys as soon as I'm done. So if class do -1 as the error case for if HP is not set. And we can do the rest here. Once again, I think it's worth repeating. Strings are probably terrible in this case for most of this stuff if you're making a real program. So keep that in mind. But this one, we want to make sure the armor is set. And we'll continue on. Make sure the weapon is set. And I think that's everything. Yeah, okay, there. That'll give us a little access to this. We probably also want to do a quick null check on Bob here before we see out all this stuff, just to make sure we don't get any strange errors. Hit Bob, see out. We'll just do some lines of Bob. See, what do we have access to? Let's look at our player character. We have all these get stuff. Okay. So that's what we have to use. Get class says it's inaccessible. Why is it inaccessible? Let's take a quick look. We forgot to put public at the top of this, so it defaulted to private. That's a thing. All right, and we'll just put like a new line character at the end of each of these. Since it's a single character, we can use single quotes. It looks like two characters, but this actually just turns into a new line character. That's just how you write it in code. I should probably make this bigger. I may have overlooked that way earlier. But we'll just continue on with this with get HP and so on. Get armor, get weapon. Maybe we'll call this guy Bob the Rogue. Okay, so now if we hit play here, if this thing created the rogue correctly, we should see, yeah, rogue, medium armor, common weapons. Obviously there's a little overlooking a few other things here, such as we're not really saying what these are, so it would make a little sense to go last name, you know, something like this, basically. That way we know what we're talking about. These are more like weapons and armor proficiency, but whatever, you get the point. We'll hit play here. There we go. We could say more even, there could be more stuff. We could expand on this pretty easily. We probably want names and all sorts of stuff. But let's just make another quick example and make a player character, Chet the Warrior. And we'll do the same thing. Character factory, create warrior. So that should return us a warrior. Let's copy down this line of code here. Oh, let me make sure this is pointer. And also, when we're done with them, we need to make sure we delete them, clean up the memory. It said I might not do that, but we are done with Bob. If you're not using them anymore, you got to delete them somewhere. Let's clean all this up. Make it chat. Oop. Chat. You could have a manager system, since we're using a singleton, where you keep track of what's been instantiated and delete them automatically and stuff like that. But we're not going to worry about that too much. There's also still some memory leaks in here, I believe, because let's see here. These, what is it? Yeah, it'd be these. These are still going to leak memory, because even if we delete our player character, these pointers also need deleted. So we probably want to do something like just make a destructor for player character here that goes, basically calls delete on all of these. If class delete class, if armor delete armor. There, this will take care of abstracting the rest of it. That way we don't need to call delete manually on everything within this class. They're not null, they'll be deleted when we delete the player character. So pretty straightforward there, and we want to do that anywhere else for pointers, of course, just manage them correctly. But it's a little bit beyond the scope of this particular pattern, but it's just, good practice. All right. Yeah. So we make a rogue, we make a warrior, we could of course make the wizard too. Let's just make sure this runs correctly. Looks good, we got our rogue, we got our warrior, they seem to be getting the right stuff. You can kind of now see the point of the abstract factory. The client end, all they get is this character factory create, where they can pass in some details about how they want it created, and it just kind of automatically creates the right thing. So that's really the big point here. And I think I've probably gone on long enough. There's probably more I could say. These get complicated. That's kind of the downside to the abstract factory, is it gets complicated, and the upside is you only expose a very small thing, such as this create method, and it does all sorts of stuff on the back end. So from the back end perspective, it's very easy to manage stuff. For example, we're not happy with the way warrior works anymore. Maybe wizards or something. If something needs changed, we can just change it right in this create method only. Or if we can leave these the same, even if they're fine, and go deeper into stuff that they're not supposed to, that the client is not supposed to access, and change these, like I was saying earlier. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Let me know what you think of the abstract pattern, and leave your comments down below if you have any, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out, guys.